And I think we are live in just a minute. We'll see. Waiting for everything to click in. All right, we're live on X and now live on YouTube. Perfect. And in the live chat as well. Okay, good. We're live everywhere. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the live chat. We have a lot to talk about tonight. We have a tropical disturbance in the Caribbean, which we're going to go on a small rant, small one, based on what I've been seeing in terms of the details with this system. We'll talk about some of the details coming up with the winter weather pattern that I'm finding very interesting. And also, when is it going to rain? I need it to rain. Everyone needs it to rain. There's fires. It's too dry. I'm lazy. Okay. I have to admit, I think I'm at fault for this. I get a lot of unjustified blame, right? But we put in landscaping. It hasn't rained since. So this is my fault. This is my fault. I'm going to take the blame for this. And whatever is causing this, the MJO, I apologize. Please let us have rain. This is ridiculous. But we're going to talk about all of that. And look, there are some signs that, hey, we could see a little bit more of a weather pattern starting to take shape going forward. So that's certainly something that's going to be fun about. So we're going to go over all the details, go over the entire forecast. I'll also discuss why we're missing out on the storm on Friday. And of course, as always, I will take all the questions in the premium live chat for all the premium consulting members, only $15 a month. And then we'll check out all of the social media, see what they're saying on YouTube, X, all that good stuff. So let's start with the tropics. Well, we have potential tropical cyclone number 19. Have you noticed there were all sorts of posts about a major hurricane hitting Florida? Destruction. Major storm. Look at all the models. What is our one rule when it comes to tropical low pressure systems? Don't start using model guidance and certainly advertising model guidance and model guidance solutions until you have a low level circulation. Why do we do this? Well, why do I do this? Some others don't. We do this because we don't know what the structure of the low pressure system is going to be. We don't know where it's going to form. Is it going to form closer to a coastline? Is it going to form further away, near a body of very warm waters, or maybe near a body of cooler waters? We don't know. We don't know if it's vertically stacked and has a very tight core, or if it's slanted and kind of disorganized. And see, those kind of things, they kind of matter. Because if you have a disorganized low pressure system near the coastline that will be interacting with a lot of land, it's less likely to become, a Category 3 hurricane that could impact the Florida coast. I don't know. Maybe you might want to back off on some of those declarations and warnings. Because I don't know. Maybe you just might be into it to, scare people. I don't know. But it's not wise to do. Because why? There's a lot of people out there, fairly or not fairly, who have a serious distrust with experts. So when you run around and you post this ridiculous nonsense, what is the first thing they're going to think? Well, why should I trust this guy? He made me go buy all this stuff. I was terrified. Nothing happened. And then when something does happen, what do? Well, they're going to be the first one that's going to sit out on their boat or in their house and say, I'm going to write it out because it's never as bad as what they say. It's stuff, little things like this matter, ladies and gentlemen. Stop. It's idiotic. It really is idiotic. We got to do better. Just because you have an AI model doesn't mean that you should be posting this nonsense. And by the way, AI is not infallible. It's created by man. Therefore, it's going to have errors. So let's chill with the GFS 10-day forecast of a tropical cyclone, or European guidance for that matter, until we follow the very, very basic rules. Wait for the low to form, and then go from there. So tonight, what do we have? Well, we have a low pressure system that's starting to form. We're going to take a look at some of the surface observations via Earth News School. And the indication here is that this is going to drift towards the Central American coast and then interact with the Yucatan Peninsula. Notice no sign of anything like a hurricane forecast or anything of that nature, but certainly it has the potential of becoming a tropical storm and interacting with plenty of landmass. How does this look right now? Well, not exactly the most organized system. We do have a broad low pressure system out here. You'll probably see the circulation probably take place right about here. A lot of the convection not really well established. You got a little bit of an outflow right about here. Not anything that's explosive or anything. The circulation, at least in the mid-level here, looks a bit broad. You're not seeing any type of, let's say, like core, warm core, or heat cores building around a low-level center or anything of that nature. So no sign of any type of rapid intensification taking place, and really not much of a sign of any type of significant organization. You do have a little bit of banding here and there, but nothing that is aggressive. So, yeah, it'll probably pick up tropical depression status in the next 12 to 24 hours. The reason why it wasn't a tropical depression previously, and let me refresh this here so that we get a good idea on the colors, and we'll make sure this is in HD. Okay. Most of the day, you had these little spin-ups all over the place. Just in the past couple of hours, and this is why they named it a PTC, potential tropical cyclone, it started to consolidate the circulation. Beforehand, you had one down here. You could almost see the remnants of it down here. You had another one up here. You had a bit of a trough. Now we're getting a little bit more organization, but you see how it's kind of strung out here? Well, that tells us it's not up to the standards of tropical depression levels where you see like a tight organization. You can also see that the winds aren't very strong here. Maybe 30 miles per hour. I mean, not anything that is like, wow, eye-popping. So you can see it has some time to get itself organized here, but with the interaction of Central America and the Yucatan Peninsula, which is a bit mountainous. Yucatan Peninsula has I don't know, what would you call it? A history of tearing apart tropical low pressure systems as the tropical low pressure system moves over the Yucatan Peninsula, especially ones that are struggling to organize. And this one would certainly fall into that category. So, yeah, you'll likely see a tropical depression. Yeah, we'll likely get our 18th named storm, as you do have plenty of warm water here, and the upper levels are favorable for further development. But I'm not seeing anything that is eye-popping. And the reason why it's really important that it's going over the Yucatan Peninsula is that, well, now most of the model guys are starting to back away from the idea of a strong tropical storm and whatnot. And you have to understand, or even a strong hurricane, should I say. There's a few solutions, but most of those solutions are on the northern edge of that storm track where it misses all the landmass, maybe skirts the Yucatan Peninsula on the very edge, and keeps on tracking over some very warm waters. But the low-level circulation is already well to the south of this type of track here. So it's right about here, and it's going to be drifting. And you see how it's tracking like this? Well, you got an upper-level ridge right around here. And ahead of that upper-level ridge, you have a trough building in. Yeah, you might have noticed the large upper-level low everyone's been noticing in the model guidance. Well, that's going to introduce two things into the Gulf of Mexico. Dry air and shear. Now, we saw last weekend what happens when a tropical system runs into dry air and shear. It essentially disintegrates. So, in this situation, you have a lot of landmass interaction. You have strong vertical wind shear taking shape while this is approaching the Florida Peninsula. yeah, you might be impacted by some sort of tropical system in Florida, but it doesn't look like the major storm that some people were trying to advertise. So, what should you do if you have friends and family in Florida or in the eastern Gulf Coast? Be prepared. That's it. That's all you can do right now. We don't have any other data, any other reliable data to go beyond that point. There is just as much data here suggesting that this thing goes through the Yucatan Peninsula and completely is torn apart. And by the time it reaches Florida, it's a weak tropical low. And there's other data suggesting it's an organized category 1 or 2 hurricane. Right now, we don't know. So, what you do is just be prepared. Have your stats. Not stats. Obviously, I have stats. Have your batteries. Have your food. Have your water. What you normally should do during this time of year. And it looks like this is pretty much going to be the last one. But again, the key point here, don't buy into the hype. Be prepared. Don't be scared. That's it. That's all you can do. So it is interesting to see how this is all playing out. And again, we'll monitor it and see how it evolves. Meanwhile, we have a lot of interesting observations. Excuse me. Grab some water. Some interesting observations with our weather pattern. Now, right now, we're moving out of MJO phase 8-1, which is favorable for tropical development, by the way, and also more favorable, not a lock, but a little bit more favorable for East Coast cyclogenesis when we go into the winter months. So it's interesting we're seeing this phase work its way through. As we move through the rest of November and into December, we're going to be moving into phases 2, 3, 4, and 5. Really more like 3, 4, and 5, but we'll go into that ballpark. In the MJO case, what this typically means is a storm track more towards the eastern Great Lakes. And yes, there is an increased potential to see some rainfall on the East Coast. So as we move towards December, I think we see a wetter pattern, but not a well above normal drenching that we really need. What we need actually in this dry weather pattern is a weather pattern where we get a lot of light to moderate rainfall events to overwhelm the dry low level environment we have in place. So I think as we move through early December, I think we're going to start seeing that a little bit more. Now you might be wondering, well, Steve, what about cold weather? We'll see some shots, but in this signal, when we're just talking about this signal, usually this would signify more of the cold weather focusing more towards the plains, and then you get like a transient shot swinging through the mid-Atlantic and New England, maybe some lake effect activity. But that's what the MJO is showing. Now, why am I focusing on the MJO so much? Well, right now, this is the only tropical force that's really locked in. When we take a look at the forcing parameters and watching what's evolving here, we're seeing a lot more forcing taking place more towards the Indian Ocean, bleeding towards the Pacific, and the fact we're starting to see more and more of an increase towards the date line does have my attention. But notice a lot of the sinking air shaping up more towards the eastern zones of the Enzano locations. A signal maybe that our La Nina is going to gain a little bit more strength. But right now, La Nina is La Nada right now. Which, I mean, I'm checking my watch. It's November 13th. Time's ticking. Come on. Let's go. The train's about to leave the station, La Nina. Are you going to be getting on or what? Because right now, 3.4 is nowhere near minus 0.5 degrees Celsius. That's the threshold. We're not even near it. We're cold neutral. Minus 0.3, minus 0.2. We had 1 week where we were minus 0.5 for like maybe a couple days. That's it. The focus has been pretty much in the eastern zones. Our SOI has been SOL. I mean, it's just been very, very weak. So I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing a... Certainly, we can rule out strong La Nina. We ruled that out a long time ago. We can rule out moderate La Nina. And I know that there's some people that like to take the sea surface temperatures and augment them to what they were previously via climate change. You really can't do that because you're just ignoring the forcing mechanisms in the atmosphere. So no, we don't have a moderate La Nina, no matter how much you try to change the statistics. Because if the statistics of that change were valid, then you'd see some sort of response in the SOI index. What we're seeing is some interesting convective patterns. Now, again, you're seeing a lot of activity out here. And you're starting to see focus more towards the date line here. Why is this important to me? Well, right now we're not in a favorable environment. But the more that we have the potential to see more convection around the date line, based on the studies that we have read with Cosin and Ussolini, which again comes from the Northeast Snowstorms book. I would strongly suggest getting Volume 1, Volume 2. They're must-reads for anyone who is interested in meteorology. We know in that research that when we see more convective activity around the date line, you increase the potential. It's not a guarantee, but you increase the potential for more East Coast cyclogenesis. Now, those storm tracks don't necessarily have to come out of the Gulf, like a Miller A. It could also support a lot of Miller B type storms, where you get a storm up towards, let's say, the Tennessee River Valley and redevelops towards the Mid-Atlantic coast, stuff like that. But the point is that you're in the game. This tells me, okay, the pattern's setting up that we're in the game. And we're starting to see some of those signals showing up. Now we take a look at the stratosphere. And a couple of things stand out to me. One, we're seeing a little bit more warming showing up in the Malgines here. I wouldn't call this a strong stratospheric warming indication, but certainly a lot of signals for stretching, which we talked about in the winter weather pattern. I like the idea of seeing a lot of polar vortex stretching, and the key is, where does the polar vortex end up as we move towards winter? And at 10 millibars, we're seeing a shift more towards Europe, maybe bleeding into North America, away from Asia. At 50 millibars, you're seeing something very interesting that I wasn't expecting at all, which is a split. I think this might be a little bit overdone. Probably more of like a severe stretch here. But the point is that we're seeing disruption in a polar vortex in a regime where you have a positive QBO. And as we know, a positive QBO typically points to a stronger polar vortex. So we're seeing some disruption here. And part of that, let me refresh this again. You can see that very nicely here at 70 millibars. You can see the stretching going on here. So we're seeing a difference in the evolution of the polar vortex. And we talked about this in the winter forecast. I suggested that we'd see this more and more vividly, a separation between what you see in the stratospheric polar vortex at 10 millibars, 30 millibars, even 50 millibars, compared to what you see from 70 millibars on down into the troposphere around 500 millibars, right? And we're starting to see that. Now, why are we seeing that? I hypothesize that the introduction of the water vapor and the imbalance in the mass equation of that water vapor from Tunga is creating all sorts of havoc in the evolution and the structure of the stratospheric circulation. And we are not handling the Malgines very well in this. And it's been creating havoc for the past 3 years. And it's going to continue to create havoc. This year, it appears to be creating this disruption between what we see in the upper stratosphere and what we're seeing in the lower stratosphere. And that disruption shows up at 500 millibars with a lot more upper level lows and blocking. Now, if you just take we have a positive QBO and a La Nina. Look, the big ridge in the east, southeast ridge, no big deal, nothing to worry about. It's going to be a quiet winter. Then you shouldn't have these upper level lows showing up. Kind of throws that whole idea kind of in trouble here. Combined with the fact that we really don't have that much of an impressive La Nina setup. So we're seeing a lot of signals here. But these signals that we're seeing at 500 millibars, and you can see these cut off upper level lows and these signs of these blockings showing up here, they create a lot of volatility. And so what you're going to see in the model guidance, and I want to put this warning out there for you, you're going to see a lot of phantom winter storms. I will say once again, for the love of God, do not post 300 plus GFS model guidance unless you want to drive yourself insane, because that's essentially what you're going to do. There is going to be a ton of volatility, a ton of phantom storms, because you have a lot of amplification in the polar and subtropical jet stream. That's going to have a lot of interaction, and it's going to lead to model guidance, yes, even the Fable AI model guidance, creating a lot of false echoes because of all these interaction of short waves. And we're already starting to see it. See, what are we on? Our third phantom rainstorm? We're not at the point where we're at that pattern to support that type of significant rainstorms for the East Coast. But it's a signal that we're moving in that direction. And so when we take a look at 250 millibars, you're seeing a lot of upper level lows showing up. One of the things that we're going to have to watch as we move into December, January, and February, we have to watch the Pacific. If we get a strong jet streak cutting right across the Pacific, mild. If we get a deep trough in the Gulf of Alaska, mild. And the storm tracks are going to get kicked off to the east or to our west. So if you're looking for any type of winter storms, there is one pattern I want. And that is a nice, robust ridge building into the Gulf of Alaska and into the west coast. That's what I want to see. And a nice upper level low right around the Aleutian Islands, right around here. I want to see a big trough here, nice big ridge here. All sorts of news stories about how warm Alaska is, because people don't understand that's an upper level ridge and you got winds coming off of the central Atlantic, which leads to very warm conditions and everybody warms up. But you think that would be the first time anyone's ever experienced that, but it's not. So when Alaska gets warm and the AP talks about it, watch out for your neck of the woods, because that's when we get cold and the Arctic air that's sitting up here takes a trip down towards the lower 48. So that's what we're looking for as we move forward. And this isn't going to be a situation because of all the chaos that we have going on here. Weak tropical signals, disrupted stratosphere signals, very warm water in the Atlantic, very warm water in the Western Pacific. These are all signals of chaos. And so as a result, you're going to see a lot of changeable weather patterns. So yes, we will have a thaw in the winter. We'll have very warm conditions. Then we'll flip cold. Then you'll have people saying winter canceled, and then winter uncanceled, and so on and so forth. So just be prepared for that. A lot of chaos, a lot of ups and downs in this winter is clearly showing up here. Now, and the other thing that really catches my eye is the QBO. The QBO is a quasi-biennial oscillation, okay? This is a study of the winds at 30 and 50 millibars. When we have westerly winds, it typically strengthens the polar vortex. But we're starting to see signals of an easterly wind starting to take shape. Now, I do not believe the QBO is going to shift to the easterly phase, at least not this winter. Maybe in the spring. But why is this important? Well, this means the QBO is probably peaking now. And that's really, really important. And this is why. You see these numbers here? Okay, this is a study of the QBO, and this is the October number. So 10.36, this is 11.64. Once the QBO falls back into these ranges here, game on for high latitude blocking. Anywhere between -10 and +10 usually is kind of a sweet spot to to feature high latitude blocking regimes. So if we've peaked in October, November, and now we weaken from mid-November through December and January, you're increasing the potential for high latitude blocking support. Not a guarantee, but more favorable. So we were going into the winter thinking, okay, moderate QBO, positive QBO. It's going to be hard to lock in high latitude blocking. Now we might have to step back from that and say, okay, look at the data that we see coming in here. Are we already reaching a peak? Is the November number the highest that we're going to be? And then we decrease through December and January. And so do we see an increasing support for high latitude blocking regimes in January than what we originally had thought? This is going to be something that we're going to be watching very carefully. And if you can follow along, just follow or you could Google cpc.ncep.noaa.gov, or you can just Google the QBO, okay, and you'll be able to get this data. It's totally free. You can follow right along with me. Or you can go to cpc.ncep.noaa.gov to get a graphical look. And right about here is 15. So you notice the winds here were pretty strong. Now they're starting to weaken. And what you're going to be watching here is these easterly values that are starting to descend and start to push this down in the atmosphere. Because the QBO winds, they go from the top of the stratosphere at 1 millibar down to the troposphere. So that's how they usually progress. So this feature gets pressed down lower into the tropospheric levels and the lower stratosphere, and then this level right here starts to push in. And when you're in this regime here, that is when we start to see that increase of high latitude blocking becoming more of a reality. So again, something to definitely watch. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on it. This process is happening a little bit faster than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to see this maybe in late February and March. We're seeing it now. So it certainly has given me pause. I've been talking about this quite a bit. So it's something that I'm going to be watching out for. Again, right now, the model guidance, negative to neutral Arctic oscillation. EPO has been flinging all over the place, positive to negative. That's a sign of the Pacific pattern being very volatile, very active. The North Atlantic oscillation is going to be playing a big role over the next couple of days, keeping us seasonable. Not below normal, not significantly below normal, anything of that nature. A degree above, degree below, depending on your highs and lows. But nothing extreme, because we're going to be transporting more of a maritime air mass. But what you really want to keep an eye on is the PNA. Okay, that's basically whether or not you get a ridge around the Rockies. When we trend more towards positive as we move towards the winter, that is when we really have to keep an eye on the storm tracks. When you have a negative PNA, you're more likely to get a lot of false echoes on your model guidance 7 to 10 days out, and then nothing once you get below 7 days. So we're going to have to watch that very carefully. As far as the model guidance with the pattern here, again, I'm looking for a significant rainfall. I'm not seeing strong signals, but I'm seeing more of a return more to a near normal regime. One thing that really has caught my eye recently is that the typical southeast ridge is being displaced in every run that I'm seeing in the Long range, this is the European guidance, 46-day guidance here, keeps on displacing that southeast ridge, and you're seeing a little bit of an increase in the heights on the west coast here. You're seeing a little bit more of a ridge here in the Gulf of Alaska, and you're seeing more of an indication of the polar vortex heading more towards the Hudson Bay. This is all at 500 millibars. Now, you want this to drop down a little bit further south, but this is several weeks out, so I'm not expecting details. But if we wanted to play verbatim on this, right? This upper level low that is sitting in to the north of the Hudson Bay has to drop further south, because basically what you end up with is a positive NAO, because this doesn't allow any type of ridging building into Alaska. But in reality, even in a somewhat unfavorable environment, we still see a lot of those heights building in Greenland, which again has my attention, because if we start seeing that more and more, I might be pretty busy in December, January, February. So again, we're going to watch this very carefully. Just a lot of interesting signals showing up. I still like the idea of most of our snow being focused towards New England and the Poconos and the Catskills, and the coast gets this wintry mixed mess. But the signals I'm trying to show here certainly are making me say, interesting. This is the European ensembles. Again, the overall theme here, we're seeing a lot more below normal heights, as I've been talking about in the winter forecast, showing up in the northwestern Atlantic. Higher potential for above normal heights here. Again, it appears to me that through November, this is a situation where we have a lot of transient air masses, not a lot of support for major storms. This is a time period of a lot of change and a lot of signals, and it's even showing up here on the GFS ensembles, of a lot of signals of which forcing mechanisms are going to be the dominant forcing mechanisms for this winter. And we're kind of seeing that battle now. And the signals that keep on showing up, which is below normal heights here. If you see a lot of below normal heights in the Gulf of Alaska, like I said, then you end up with more of a mild weather pattern over much of the eastern United States. The European guidance sees this differently. Below normal heights here, above normal heights here. So we'll see which mild guidance is the most correct. Still, same issue here with that upper level low up towards the Gulf up towards the Arctic Circle. So again, when you're dealing with this, you're not seeing a lot of cold air build up here. Now understand, when you have this type of signal here, that doesn't mean it's warm up here. It just means that it's above normal for the normals here. But you still have a lot of cold air built up here. Just not as cold as what you can have. And you're seeing a polar air mass dropping in as we head towards Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving could be a little bit more active. I want to wait until I get a little bit more data. But we could see at least maybe a little bit more rain around the end of the month. And again, that signal is starting to show up here, where at the very least we go back to near normal for the potential for rainfall in late November. This matches up nicely with the MJO signal 4 and 5, which typically takes your storm tracks up into the Great Lakes. So maybe via isotropic lifting, warm fronts, you get some waves of rainfall. But again, no major storms. This isn't like a shift like we go very dry to a lot of rain. This is more like, instead of it not raining for 2 months, you get a few showers here and there every other day or something of that nature, trying to get us back to near normal. And that's essentially what's showing up here in the guidance. A lot of passing showers, but no major storms. A lot of the storms cutting up towards the Great Lakes. And then we get, the warm front and the cold front passage to follow. Right now, it's quiet. polar air mass in place. It actually smells amazing out there. I was coming back from the gym this evening, and you just kind of got that hit of fresh polar air that hits you. You know, you kind of get that little Christmas type feel, you know. Christmas too. I like to think of Christmas because then I start thinking of Christmas cookies and hot cocoa and snow and turkeys. Anyway, so it's really nice out there. Unfortunately, the dew points are kind of low, and it is dry, and we have forest fire issues going on here. So, again, we need the rainfall. Unfortunately, we have a disturbance on the way, and you think like, hey, look, there's all this lifting coming in here. This should mean rainfall for us on Friday, right? No. This upper level low is starting to form. This is running into that upper level low. And so what happens is that this feature basically gets crushed to the south. It's kind of caught in between the subtropical jet stream and the polar jet stream. So the polar jet stream's up here. You have your upper level low cut off. It just crushes everything. And so as a result, on Friday morning and Friday afternoon, all your strongest lifting is all focused to the south. This is a signal here that the polar and subtropical jet streams in this scenario are not aligned. Okay? So when you don't have an alignment and you have basically both of the jet streams have different wavelengths, what that leads to then is basically this suppression setup. So when you have an upper level low setting up around the Canadian Maritimes, yes, it transports maritime air masses. Yes, you do see a little bit more of an increase in low-level moisture because you get some transport from the Atlantic. But it also prevents you from seeing significant rainfall events. You might get a few passing showers on Monday with a shortwave that tries to drive through. But again, not really all that impressive, and you don't get a strong, deep moisture transport from the Gulf or anything of that nature because you still have this separation between the two jet streams. So the subtropical jet stream features a trough in the desert southwest and a ridge over the southeast. The trough here marches through the east coast, but doesn't have much in the way of moisture transport. So you just get a few scattered showers, maybe 1/10 of an inch of rain. That's about it. Again, you can see that suppression here at 700 millibars, 850 millibars. And if you want to look at the moisture feed, it's all focused down towards Virginia. You can see that influence from the upper level low in the Atlantic, just crushing it. Same thing at 700 millibar relative humidity. So it looks like this weekend is going to be pretty quiet. And also, if you want to have an understanding of the air masses and the influence of the QBO and the polar vortex and all that stuff that's happening right now, all you need to do is look at 850 millibar temperatures, where you have a maritime air mass generally in control over the Northeast. The rest of the country is influenced more by Pacific air mass. All of your polar and Arctic air is locked up here, which is textbook of a positive QBO regime. And now there's indications that we could see more of a transport of these polar air masses, maybe even the Arctic air mass. I think this might be a little bit overdone. Kind of want to get this under, let's see if this sticks at 162 hours out. But this looks like a little bit overdone here. But certainly you get the idea here. You get an upper level load taking shape. The GFS is trying to pull the same thing here. Again, I want to get under 162 hours to really buy into the intensity. I like the overall theme. Transient, quick shot of polar air. I like that. That makes a lot of sense. The intensity here seems a bit overdone, especially when you have a lot of missing snowfall down here. Well, that's going to tend to lead to a lot of moderation of these air masses. So it looks a little bit overdone here. And then the GFS does what it does, which is gives a lot of false hope that we could see polar air masses pressing south. So don't be surprised if GFS starts popping off a couple of winter storms especially towards New England in this setup. But we're not there yet. We're not in that pattern yet. And so, take a look at the forecast overall. If I can get the right map. There we go. Basically, it's going to be very quiet this weekend. Maybe a few passing showers on Monday. We'll see what happens with our tropical system. See what we make of that. And, of course, our cold front that marches through that brings us the potential for rainfall. But again, this is likely overdone. We've seen this in several solutions in the past 2 weeks. 7 days out, 10 days out. Look, heavy rainfall, strong cold front. And then it peters out to just a few showers. So I wouldn't buy this just yet. Let's get it, like I said, let's get under 160 hours, 162 hours. And then we can really start diving into details under 120 hours. But you can see what the evolution is. And I would say if you have friends and family around the Eastern Great Lakes for around Thanksgiving time, make some plans, make some backup plans in case you're dealing with lake effect snow. Just going to put that out there. So I pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover. Now I shall answer all the questions in the live chat. See what we got going here. And then, of course, I will be more than happy to check out, see what's going on in social media. Let's see. Card had a quarter of an inch of rain every 10 days is not going to cut it. Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely agree with that. We definitely need more rain than that, unfortunately. So, yeah. Let's see. Snowballs had 0.35 inches on Sunday night. I had about 0.1.5, somewhere around there. Not enough. Not enough at all. Looking on Earth New School, very impressive feeds from the tropics up to the poles at both 10 millibars and 70 millibars. Of course, both have the core of the vortex over Siberia again. Yeah, the transport from the tropics is pretty much standard for this time of year. That's why we see a lot of our storms, because we're seeing a lot of transport of heat and moisture towards the poles and vice versa. For those who want snow and cold, going to need to move towards North America. Absolutely. Snowball says we actually really need a lot of snow as that will help replenish groundwater. Absolutely, 100% agree. 100% agree. If the PV stays way over the other side, winter will be over before it even starts. Agreed. Here's the good news. I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that in the observations. And I'm not seeing that in the model guidance, where it basically gets stuck in Siberia and towards China. I'm not seeing that signal, at least not yet. So let's not jinx it. So that's certainly some good news. We're seeing a lot of stretching towards Europe and North America. If we see that in December and January, we have a chance. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but we're in the ball game at least. Smells amazing unless you're downwind of wildfires. Yeah, well, that's definitely true. That is definitely true. Let's see what we have on YouTube. Oh, holy smokes. We have been busy. So, yeah, YouTube's active. I shall pick the best one of the bunch. Good ones. Let's see here. Book recommendations. Let's see. Do you think Philly has a chance of some type of snow in Thanksgiving week? Flurries? Maybe flurries? Nothing accumulating. I would say the best shot for flurries though is going to be more towards the Poconos, north and west of Philly. Book recommendations about meteorology for junior, senior high schools. Oh, for planning for college. Oh, I got so many. Okay, let's start with the basics first. Northeast snowstorms. And again, you could all check this out in the AMS. Okay, American Meteorological Society. They have a great source of books for that age group. But this is the one I would strongly suggest. Northeast Snowstorms by Paul Cosin and Usolini. A little technical, but it'll set you up so well for Met 101 and also your sophomore year, especially with some of the equations. If you get just a basic idea, just at least see them and read them. it's going to help you so much in college. It helped me quite a bit. Let's see here. Mesoscale meteorology. If the person is really good at math, definitely check out mesoscale meteorology and forecasting. Again, American Meteorological Society. Let's see here. What else? Because you can never go wrong, especially if someone's younger. National Autumn Society Field Guide North American Weather has a lot of great little tidbits here. Cool pictures of different clouds. You could definitely check that out. I think that's on Amazon. I got this when I was, I want to say when I was 16. So this is definitely a good book. Let's see here. There's so many. There's so much. The truth is that there's so much opportunity out there. But I would say if you're not sure, definitely visit the AMS, the American Meteorological Society. They have a great website, great catalog of books in age groups. I strongly suggest checking it out. Oh, boy. I need someone to explain thickness. Okay. So, this is more of a freshman level class discussion. But the way you look at thickness is this. When a layer in the atmosphere is colder, right? I'm just kind of get my hands right here. What happens is that the layers compress. So when you're looking at 500, 1000 millibar thickness, we normally look for the 540 line. What does the 540 line signify? It signifies that the column of air is colder and so it contracts. So the 540 line is a signal that supports frozen precipitation. When you see expansion, okay, it's when you're seeing that expansion at 500 millibars, 850 millibars, you have warmer air. So what it is kind of like watching an accordion, right? When it gets compressed, cold, expands, warm, compress, cold, expand, warm. So that's the basic idea. It's a lot more technical than that, but then we wouldn't have time. I'd be like here for like 2 hours, and that is why you go to college. What is the alarm over 2 degrees centigrade warming? Daily, we experience temperature variations. Okay, so the 1 degree, 2 degrees, all that stuff, it's the average, right? So you could be 6 degrees above normal for your high, but your low may not be that significant. It could even be below normal. So the issue is that the average of the temperature for that day, that's what we're studying. That's what's important. Let's see here. 42 days with no rain in Philly shattered previous record 1874. Yeah. Let's see. Will the system by Thanksgiving be the system that brings much needed rain? No idea. No, I have no idea right now. Way too far out. Anyone that tells you they know is full of it. Okay? What don't we know? We don't know what the strength of the moisture transport is. We don't know how fast the system moves. We don't know exactly where the upper level low is setting up in this scenario. Is it dropping as far south as some of the model guides are suggesting, or does it get hung up more towards, let's say, the Great Lakes? So there's a lot we don't know. Let's wait. It's too early to talk about December just yet. I gave some hints though. Okay, this is great. It's good that I touch on this now. What would you say our chance in New York City sees more than 5 inches of snow for the entire month of December? Understand, I make this point every year. I will make it again. There is a reason why there's less than a 10% chance for the northern mid-Atlantic, New York City and Philadelphia, to have a white Christmas. And that the title White Christmas is snow on the ground. Less than 10%. So, my answer is that less than 10% chance. Now, when we get into December, we can start to look at individual systems, and maybe we have a different conversation. But climatologically speaking, most of our winter storms are in January and February. December, White Christmas, White Hanukkah, whatever you want to celebrate, that's more of a Hollywood thing. And most of those stories are based in Chicago and in the upper Midwest, where it's a little easier to get that snow.
And they're filmed in Canada.
And they're filmed in Canada. That's true. And one of my favorite Christmas movies, White Christmas, you know, where they're on the train, this and that. They go to New England. They don't have any snow. They went to, yeah, that's right. They went to Vermont, and there's no snow. And that's like the premise of the whole, like that's the background theme in the whole movie is the fact that there is no snow in Vermont for most of December. I think it's probably a La Nina year. We'll see. So there's just that. So just kind of putting that out there. Anything on X? YouTube?
Somebody asked if it's promising for snow lovers on the East Coast.
I would say we've moved away from depression to cautious hope. That's where I'll go. From we'll never see snow to we might have a shot. That's, I say, where we're at. Anything on the other social medias?
You didn't work on Instagram, so there's nothing going on there.
Figures.
Because you're not on there.
Well, you know, as I always say, when it comes to social media, with this, some of these streamings are just weird. I don't know. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, but there's nothing there. So.
Okay.
Wait, maybe. Just as I said that, something came through.
What's that?
Basically the same thing. I think you just came through on Instagram. Good.
Figures. Happy Wednesday. So potential snowstorm. Okay.
Snow on Thanksgiving. Everybody wants snow on Thanksgiving.
I think somebody's been posting a GFS. Okay, so look. There is increased potential for some sort of cyclogenesis towards the end of the month. If you want to know where the best chance for snowfall in the end of November is, it's in New England, the eastern Great Lakes. Let's see here. Is there anything showing up on the GFS? Not really. I mean, if you're looking for snow, you want to go to Oswego, Syracuse, Buffalo. I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm saying that's where you want to go. Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. New York City? Not really. Maybe you see a flurry. I'm just talking climatologically speaking. As far as Malgans, I'm not seeing anything that says, oh, look, snowstorm. Really not at all. So, let's see here. Do we have any more questions in the live chat? No, it looks like it's pretty good. So, just to kind of follow up on some of the themes for tonight. Again, we're still waiting to see if we have any closed low for our tropical system, our potential tropical cyclone 19. We don't yet, but lo and behold, we're getting better data and better observations, and we're moving away from the worst case scenario, which really shouldn't have been advertised in the first place. The winter weather pattern showing some hope. No guarantees, but certainly some hope that the whole winter won't just be a mild slog fest, that we will have some periods of high latitude blocking and some storminess. Whether that means a lot of snow for you in your backyard, I don't know yet. I still like the idea of near to above normal towards the Poconos and Catskills, near to slightly below normal in the I-95 corridor, below normal on the Jersey Shore, especially southern Jersey Shore. I could be wrong, and I would be wrong if we see a negative NAO get locked in. So, we'll wait and see. In the meantime, while we wait for rain at some point, unfortunately, the potential for this weekend is la nada, nothing. So, as a result, looking for a tranquil weekend as the rainfall passes to our south towards southern Delaware, Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, but not us, unfortunately. So the only type of rain we're going to see is if someone drops a bucket while passing over on a plane. That is pretty much it. So I think we covered everything we needed to cover. I got all the questions answered. And so with that, it is almost 9 o'clock at 8:55. So we'll call it a night. We'll keep an eye on our tropical systems. And as always, stay safe out there.